Welcome to the 6-5 Podcast. I'm your host today, Daniel Newman, principal analyst and founding partner at Futurum Research, joined by my always esteemed co-host and friend and technology industry analyst extraordinaire, Patrick Moorhead. Patrick, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great. And you know what? If I got introduced like that every day, it would just be smooth sailing. My ego would be bigger than it already is. I'd have to get a second office to fit my ego inside, but I'm doing well. I was a little bit stir crazy last week, but it's a little bit better this week. I really want to get out on the road, my friend, and do anything in a different city.
Yeah, but Austin's great. So, I mean, you keep telling me to come there, so you can't keep telling me you want to leave. That's not very convincing. No, it's funny. I have to do these long, warm introductions of you now because we can't spend any time BSing about where we are because we're always at home. And that's just going to be the way forever. It appears this, I think in May, we're like, maybe by summer, and now summer, we're like maybe by fall, but now it's going to be the twindemic is going to hit us in the fall. So we're going to have the flu and the coronavirus. So, button down and plan to stay home until, 2030 and just listen to us, everybody. I mean, why not? We're having fun.
Exactly. I remember the first lockdown, it was, hey, lockdown for 14 days, right? Yeah. And here we are on day 150. So
yeah, you can't, you don't want it to belittle or take any of this lightly. It's all very important, and getting things right here is important. But at the same time, if you can't smile a little bit and have a good time and talk about the biggest news in the tech industry, and then let us, Patrick Moorhead and myself, break it down for you with 6 topics every week, 5 minutes of deep analysis. And before we get it started on our show, we have a great show for you today. I do have to remind everybody, this show is for information and entertainment purposes only. And while we will be talking about publicly traded companies, we will even talk about stocks and the performance of those stocks. Do not buy or make any investments or short or write options or do anything because of anything we say on this show. This show is for information and entertainment only.
Yeah, in fact,
by the way, for
maybe do the opposite.
The best information and entertainment. So, Patrick, I'm going to let you riff on our first topic today. IBM made a big announcement this week of its Power10 architecture during hot chips, which drew a lot of attention as the company is getting into 7 nanometer.
Yeah, so let's just dive right in. As we both know, chips are eating the world alongside of software in the cloud. But IBM really raised the game of the industry for data center processors. So just to put it in context, IBM has 2 homegrown processor platforms. One is for the Z series of mainframes, and the other is the Power. And I feel like I just can't call them servers. They're kind of in between a server and a mainframe. They're like just a monster server processor, and they're not the volume play like an Intel or even AMD. They're very particular to certain verticals because they do certain things extremely well. They're known for their multi-threadedness. I got that out. They have the largest memory footprint, which means when it comes to things like massive in-memory databases like SAP, they do really well. And then finally, they're really noted, and I like to call them the Swiss Army knife of ML accelerators, because they were the first with PCIe 4. They were the first with an accelerator slot that could actually share memory with the processor. And what that does is it makes it easier to program things like machine learning. So whether it's an NVIDIA GPU, an FPGA or ASIC, it just rocks. So it does very well in financial, in retail, in government, prior to AMD coming in and sweeping the top 100 or doing really well in the top 100 alongside with Intel. IBM Power was always the top of that. So real quick, what does Power10 bring? The coolest feature that I think it brings is this idea of disconnecting memory from the system. So enabling multiple servers to share the same pool of memory without having to have them either stuck in the same server or using technologies, let's say over Ethernet. We call that RoCE, RoCE, to share memory pools over Ethernet, but Ethernet's slow. So at full memory speeds, as an example, you could access petabytes of memory. So imagine SAP or Oracle database with petabytes of addressable memory, not storage, but memory. And imagine if you're a hyperscaler, and while nobody's been talking about this, I'm going to bring it up first. I could see somebody like Google, who has ported their entire stack to Power, in addition to x86, using this to actually save money by being able to have any server address this giant pool of memory. That's as far as I'm going to go with the geekery here. It's 7 nanometer, meaning that by the time it comes out next year, it won't be bleeding edge, but it'll still be very leading edge. So those are the highlights, Daniel, and then we'll see if they can move up their unit market share. Their revenue market share is admirable on this, plus when you add Z15 in, but they're really not a volume play at this point. But this could be the thing that moves it forward. We all thought, and I thought, Google was going to go all in and drive a ton of volume. Google did buy Power 9s, but I don't think they bought enough of them to drive the unit share up.
So, Pat, I'm going to do something I don't normally do on this show, but I'm going to ask you a follow-on question. I didn't get to attend Hot Chips. You talked a lot about the memory. And so Intel obviously has a pretty sizable investment in Optane, and their story is really about being able to put memory into a memory mode that creates on demand. And is this sort of following suit? Is it, can you just, I haven't had a chance, so I'm just kind of figured this would be a good opportunity. Talk about how this differs or how it's similar.
Yeah. So Optane, the speeds of Optane are in between memory and flash storage. What IBM's new architecture allows is the memory to operate at memory speeds, right? Like picoseconds versus milliseconds. And it's probably 10 times faster than Optane. Now, Optane's super fast, and it's 10 times faster than Flash. So, there's a bit of a new hierarchy in store here. And Optane came in and shook up the storage tier, and I think IBM is coming in and they're messing that storage tier as well.
Very interesting.
Great question. By the way, first question everybody should be asking.
Yeah, well, absolutely. The first thing as you were talking about, I'm thinking, okay, because Optane really, this was their story. I remember them showing the impact to SAP workloads and how SAP was very excited, for instance. And you used the same example. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, I think everyone out there is going to probably want to know. All right. Well, listen, IBM is kind of a quiet disruptor in the chip space. Power is, still making moves and still very relevant. And I think it's one of those that if you're in this space, you need to keep an eye on. Let's get to the second topic, NVIDIA earnings. Pat, I'm going to kick this off here. Look, the tech industry, I keep saying it, and I feel like every week we have a show and we cover at least one, if not 8 earnings on our 6 topics. But NVIDIA, everyone was waiting. I mean, look, this stock was roaring towards 500. It's trading at almost 90 times earnings right now, and people are excited about this stock. And they delivered this quarter. Record revenue, $3.87 billion on the quarter. It beat on earnings. It beat on revenue. It was 50% year-over-year revenue growth. Gaming, solid for the company with mid 20% growth. both sequentially and high 20% annual year over year. I'll just quickly touch on a couple soft areas for the company that was in their ProViz business and automotive business, but honestly, it was almost unspoken of because its data center business exploded this quarter, 167% growth year over year. And Pat, this is the bellwether moment for NVIDIA. Gaming has ruled the roost at NVIDIA for the longest time. Well, guess what just happened? Data center business just usurped the gaming business. And there's two reasons that this happened. One is NVIDIA's AI for training and its new frameworks for inference are exploded. The A100 framework offered economies of scale, price efficiency. It offered data center floor space efficiency. It was bought in mass. Companies like Microsoft getting behind this technology and rolling it out. Among others, Alibaba is using their frameworks and technology for recommendation engines. But Pat, they also acquired Mellanox, and this was the first time that Mellanox's network fabric and revenue was incorporated into the numbers. So, quietly that also happened, and it was 14% of NVIDIA's revenue. So that was a fairly significant thing. Now, again, from an analysis standpoint, NVIDIA is on fire. In the AI space right now, they are really setting the pace for AI as a whole. That doesn't mean other players aren't making inroads. We're watching what Intel is doing. We're watching what IBM's doing. You have companies like Qualcomm that are doing AI at the edge. From a both a semiconductor chip and framework level. But NVIDIA really has the momentum right now. And like I said, that I don't focus on gaming as much as some firms do. But for a long time, I've kind of wondered if gaming would remain NVIDIA's biggest business. And what I'm seeing now is that I will be very surprised coming the next few quarters that data center doesn't consistently become its largest business, because in the wake of COVID-19, AI and the acceleration of workloads and of data and digital transformation across the enterprise has scaled at a great rate. And NVIDIA is sort of finding itself in every major hyperscale player and inside of every data center of company that are looking to do massive acceleration of workloads. So Pat, I thought this was a really big moment for NVIDIA. And I think that, like I said, it looks like based upon the going forward that the revenue is actually just expected to keep growing and keep booming. And a lot of that is being powered by data center.
Yeah, so symbolically, I think it mattered. I want to keep in mind that this was driven by the Mellanox acquisition. Otherwise, that wouldn't be the case. Now, you take out Mellanox, and they still had a record data center number. I believe next quarter gaming will actually be larger than data center. That's a pretty easy call, I think, based on what they did in Q3 of last year, and also the PC gaming market is actually growing. I don't think they're going to gain share, but I believe that the market's bigger and keeps growing, quite frankly, because people have to spend a lot more time at home, and a lot of those people are gaming. NVIDIA is a play that they are competitive in very big and growing markets, right? They're the backbone of machine learning training, and they also do very well in inference. And in the data center for training, let's just be honest, they don't have a lot of competition at all. Intel could be in there with Habana. AMD could surprise people with their next generation silicon. But you add that, it's the software piece. And that's where I think, Intel with one API, we're going to have to see the value that brings across all the disparate silicon. AMD is running more of an open source software route, which gets you there a little bit slower, which puts the burden on NVIDIA to keep this going.
Yeah, I think you hit some things on the head, Pat, and the year, the timing of the year in gaming. I think you made some really good points. I I'm still bullish that the data center numbers are going to grow at a faster rate than people are expecting. Companies that are trying to transform to survive this COVID-19 and the impact it's had on business are making large bets. And the large bets come in two forms. They come in the forms of the hyperscalers making large investments in additional GPU accelerator capacity to be delivered as a consumption-based service for smaller, and then you've got the large buys for companies that are, fueling their own data centers. And in both cases, you say yourself, NVIDIA just has right now a very strong market position. There are other companies that are rising. There are other companies that are going to come into the space to compete. There's still a lot of value in technologies like Xeon Scalable for acceleration of and inference on certain workload types, the SAPs and your database type workloads. But when you come to big, meaty, conversational and recommender type technologies that these e-commerce companies are investing in, NVIDIA has really done well. So I'm waiting for that competition because I love what innovation does to the market. But right now, the reason we're seeing the success from NVIDIA is because they've done a lot of things right, and that's what's led their stock price up. And I'm bullish on seeing it continue that way. Oh, by the way, this is not investment advice. Just saying the company's doing really well. All right, Pat, let's get to the third topic. And this one's a lot of fun. Speaking of public companies doing interesting things. So, you'd have to be under a rock to not have heard about Donald Trump executive order to ban TikTok here in the near, not so distant future. And then, immediately thereafter, we heard about Twitter potentially acquiring it. And then we heard more and more perhaps concrete talks about Microsoft looking at acquiring TikTok's US and certain other parts of its operation. And then this week, kind of out of nowhere, but validated on CNBC, Jim Cramer was talking about this. And it seems that President Donald Trump really likes the idea of now Oracle joining in forces with a private equity group. I think it was 20% Oracle, 80% private equity, going in and making a bid for Oracle to take over TikTok's US operations, and then a number of other geos where there is strong opposition to China, data compliance and security regulations like New Zealand, Australia, UK, I believe was another part of it. Pat, I'll start off here real quick, but I'll give you this one quicker. I won't hog this one again. All I'll say is this: when Microsoft was slated, and by the way, Salesforce was also in the race to buy LinkedIn, I think a lot of the market paused and said, this seems really weird. Why does Microsoft want LinkedIn? Well, as that happened, I think we've learned quickly. I don't think you'd have to ask anybody twice today why Microsoft would want to acquire LinkedIn. Social and data brought together, customer data platforms, SaaS, anonymized data, analytics, the ability to truly understand and provide 360 customer views, social media, and the kind of data that lives on social media is invaluable. Now, Oracle is an old monolith in a lot of people's eyes. I believe the company's changing its skin a little bit. It's a dragon, as I like to call it. They're shedding their scales. They are trying to rebirth themselves as more of a cloud, more of a SaaS company. Their Gen 2 cloud has some very impressive attributes to it. Fusion ERP and NetSuite are pure SaaS software. TikTok is the future, though, and I hate it. I mean, I'm being honest with you. My kids use it. I watch them. It's silly, but these kids love it, Pat. And how does a company like Oracle make a meaningful connection to the consumer of the future? And that's why I think this could potentially make sense.
Gosh, I'm not going to try to convince anybody this is a good move. What I'm going to weigh in on what some of the benefits could be and why this could be. Nobody questions Oracle's security, and nobody questions Oracle's capability to manage data, right, in a way that's legal on multiple continents. And that's what this play is. I think this is different from LinkedIn, is that TikTok is 100% consumer and LinkedIn is probably 95% B2B. Yep. So I could see that. But I think my thoughts were the same thing when I heard about Microsoft. I mean, Microsoft, sure, they have some consumer properties left with Xbox Live, and they've retooled a few of their services to be more consumer friendly. But they're a B2B company, okay? That's where they're at. That's one of the reasons that they've been so successful, in that they're focused on that. And I see Oracle as a good guardian and purveyor of that data. And I also could see this as an incredible proof point of their Gen 2 cloud, right? That says, listen, do we have scale? Yes or no? Yes, we do. In fact, we host the largest social media site, or the hottest social media site. Facebook would be the first on our site, and here's our scale. And I also think, ironically, they bought ahead with some of their CapEx, and they could handle companies like Zoom, like 8x8, and potentially even TikTok's US operations.
Yeah. So I see we agree on some of this, disagree on other, and that's okay. I look at it this way: understanding the construct of retail and buyer behavior in the future. Pure B2B play is not the best answer for companies like Oracle that have SaaS businesses for customer experience, for retail. They're trying to be able to support a large, growing number of companies wanting to deliver on e-commerce, wanting to deliver the right product at the right time to the right person. To be able to do a 360 customer data platform, commerce view, you have to be able to get inside of the person and the persona of a consumer. And by the way, business buyers are consumers. And one of the biggest misnomers out there is that just because it's a consumer site, that you don't get the look inside the buyer. You go to Facebook, you go to Twitter, you go to Instagram. There's a reason that companies spend more money on those platforms than almost any other platform on the planet now for advertising. And it's because you want to know what people like and what people do and what people buy. That's where you look. That's where you find it. TikTok, the people on TikTok right now aren't the people with the money, but in 5 and in 10 years, they will be. And guess what? Oracle, Microsoft, all these companies that are in the fray need to have businesses that are bulletproof and future-proof, and having the access to a data of a company like TikTok could help pave the way. Pat, I think we're mostly in agreement, a little bit of disagreement, but heck, that's what makes this show fun.
Exactly. Right. I mean, if we agreed on everything, Daniel, it'd be boring. And based on, I'm a much older guy. And we've got that. Hey, but we're both originally from the Midwest, so there is some definite kinsmanship that I have with you, and I do like Chicago better than Cleveland. So,
oh yeah, Cleveland rocks. Drew Carey told me so. All right, let's get to the next topic here, Pat. Big news. You wrote a great Forbes article about Amazon. They are adding jobs. They're doing this hub spoke kind of concept now. And it looks like this company is going to continue rolling forward, being by far the biggest job creator in the wake of COVID-19.
Yeah, Daniel, just on the data here. So they announced yet more jobs. They hired 175,000 people since COVID broke out. These were primarily for their warehouses and distribution centers. But they announced 20,000 tech jobs, and these are what we would refer to as information workers, and added tech hubs, increased presence in the tech hubs in Dallas, Detroit, Manhattan, Phoenix, and San Diego. The reason that I'm so passionate about this, Daniel, and it's funny, I didn't even realize it when I brought it up, the Cleveland Chicago thing. So, I grew up in Cleveland in the 70s and the 80s, and I watched jobs leave, and basically people's lives were broken still broken. The area that I grew up in is one of the highest opioid addicted in the entire country. And a lot of that, I look at the disintegration of the steel, auto, rubber, and other heavy manufacturing that was there. GM, Ford, they all fled. So job and job creation, I'm very passionate about. So when I see some people writing articles about job creation being bad, it literally boils my blood. I think a lot of that, we sometimes don't look at history, but historically, we're in the biggest growth that this country has ever seen, even bigger than the Roaring '50s, post World War II. And that's amazing because we had been spending all our money on arms, but yeah, we're in the biggest growth right now, and I give the company a lot of credit. Amazon doesn't always hit it right. They make mistakes. They're a huge company, but I give them a tremendous amount of credit for again adding more American jobs, good jobs. The lowest pay of the 175,000 people, 175,000 jobs they added were $15 an hour, which is twice the lowest rate that you're legally allowed to hire people at.
Yeah, Pat, I think you hit a very interesting and important point home. I think both parties, partisanship aside, agree that 15 is kind of where they want the floor to be. Amazon has stepped up and said, we'll set that floor. We'll set that floor. We'll create jobs. We'll create jobs in many different geographies. And we'll continue to be we'll continue to be aggressive in doing so. Pat, you said this right. I mean, people right now, it's like you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can be mad about how things are going, but when a company steps up and creates thousands of jobs, we should be excited and we should give credit. Now, if you want to take swipes at really large companies that are really successful, I think that's common. That's fair. When success always breeds a certain amount of contempt in any society. But Amazon's done a lot of important things. And right now, amidst what's going on in our economy, which, like you said, is growing, but is facing a job shortage, it is good to see a company that can offer strong benefits, geographic disparity, entry level, all the way up to highly skilled executive paying gigs. Amazon's a very diverse company compared to a lot of our tech companies that don't have that kind of diversity in terms of the ability to hire. That's one of the things that makes Amazon unique. It's got a really, really vast scope in what it does. So I was really pleased to see it, Pat. I thought you had a really nice article there. Maybe unlike the Oracle thing, this one, I think we can agree 100%, no question. All right, let's talk about a new CEO appointment in the collaboration space, Pat. And it's a company that we've been talking more about and paying more attention to. This company, Poly, which was the marriage of Polycom and Plantronics, two of the UC giants, have come together. But over the past several months, the company's been run by Bob Haggerty, its chairman, who stepped into that role. However, now they finally found a CEO, and it was an interesting appointment, Pat. And what made this really a worthy topic to dive in and analyze is the collaboration industry, which, by the way, is where my tech background was birthed. I've been playing in the UC and video space for 2 decades. I've had dedicated video in my life since I pretty much got out of college. It used to be like I felt I was young. I'm not young anymore. That was like 20 years ago. But they went out of the industry, which, if you know about collaboration and UC, that almost never happens. They hired a gentleman by the name of Dave Shull. And Dave Shull was most recently the CEO of TiVo. Before that, he was the CEO of the Weather Company, or the Weather Channel, as you probably would know it. And then he had a stint as high senior ranking official at Dish. And one of the questions that I got hit most immediately by the media on this topic was the kind of contempt for the idea of Poly going outside of the industry and bringing someone in. And I just wanted to say, I wanted to take this opportunity to provide some analysis that, we've seen collaboration evolve from kind of a unique appliance-based industry that was adjacent to IT, that would connect to your network, but it was really the video conferencing. It was like an AV product. I mean, it was really in its own little world.
Yeah.
Now, Microsoft, Cisco, Zoom, and others have basically redefined it. And we've come to terms that video and collaboration is IT. It is productivity. It is, in many cases, SaaS. It's connectivity and man, in the wake of COVID, it is the ultimate ability for us to stay connected and in communication with our businesses. Growth has to be the thing for Poly. So Poly's numbers were fairly flat. They saw stronger growth in some of their higher end solutions during this pandemic. But if you think about how Zoom grew and how WebEx grew and how Microsoft Teams grew, I think the company made a really good decision to go to a CEO who's got experience in explosive growth in media and has a different eye, because you see companies that were traditional UC, that stayed traditional UC, have not seen the explosive growth that companies that have treated it more like big tech have. So is Shull a perfect fit? I think there's a TBD there. He's not necessarily, he hasn't necessarily been the guy that's grown a Zoom or Microsoft yet, but we've seen with products like TiVo how dynamic they can be. But of course, we've also seen how fast they can fall. So I'm hoping Shull can come in, shake up the business, get growth-oriented, partner-oriented, and help take the company to the next level.
Those great insights, Daniel. And you were once CEO of a UC company, which I think is always super impressive. So my read on Shull coming in and who they chose is makes sense to me for many of the reasons you said. I think some of the best enterprise products are very technologically complex. They're very secure, but they have a consumer experience wrapper on them. This is one of the reasons why MacBooks are still very popular in the C-suite. Okay, it's not that I think we can debate on how secure they are, but there's no debatable that it's consumer friendly. And I think Dave coming in with his consumer understanding, and CEOs have big teams. He doesn't have to be the expert in everything, but he understands how to survive and thrive in consumer margins, which I think are a plus. But I have to tell you, I kind of see a work from home play here, right? I see because Poly doesn't have a lot of what I would consider work from home technologies. I have two of their solutions in here. I'm in my office and they're great. But the highest quality webcam that I could put on top of my display, that is not an option right now. I also think one of the biggest things that changed work from home is people are willing to pay $300 to have an incredible video and audio experience at home. Where if you look at the most expensive Logitech cam that was out there, that I would say is mediocre at best. I'm using it right now. The Logitech Brio is $199. By the way, I had to buy it on eBay for $250 because I couldn't get it. I think we've reset expectations, and I think we've also increased price elasticity for these type of solutions. So I'm super excited to see what the company comes up with this new look.
Yeah, Pat, I think it's interesting. We'll have to follow it, come back to it in maybe a year here. But big move. Good to see the company stepping outside of the box. That's what we look for. And then we always back that up looking for results. So, Pat, let's wrap this one up. Like usual, we've been a little long-winded, but the last topic is actually a fun one. So Apple is in an epic battle right now as the company is apparently going to remove Fortnite from its app store. And wow, talk about two cults hitting, just driving headfirst in large vehicles and trucks, just waiting to crash. Pat, what does this mean?
Yeah, so on the heels of Apple losing a monumental case to Qualcomm in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and it was Qualcomm and FTC, but that lawsuit was created as Apple being the primary complainant. So, Apple lost that, and then a week later they lose a $500 million IP judgment down here in the great state of Texas. And 2 weeks before, Tim Cook was testifying, and the Apple reaction was, "We don't need to be here. All these other companies basically do, but we shouldn't be there." I'm paraphrasing, of course. Tim Cook didn't say that. There were questions about, why us? Well, this is exactly the reason. And Daniel, not only was it pulling Fortnite, it was on the 17th, 3 days ago. I know once we get this produced, it'll be after that. But Apple not only removed Fortnite from the App Store, but Epic said that Apple was going to terminate all of their developer accounts from iOS and Mac developer tools. And Epic is more than a one-shot pony here. I mean, they have hundreds of titles that are out there that are big, that are popular, that I know all my kids play and all my gaming friends play. And the interesting point here, I think, is going to be not just around the intrigue, but Epic has mobilized their gaming audience on this. They did a video that looks like the 1980s Apple commercial, with one of their characters throwing a hammer into the display and of all the autonomons. And now it's gamers, not just Epic, but Epic is using their proxy audience of gamers to go after Apple. And, as we saw with Apple and Qualcomm, remember what happened the day before Apple quit and settled with Qualcomm? The day before, in what we like to call the ODM lawsuit, Qualcomm brought in evidence that showed that Apple had a PowerPoint that was its plan to, and these are my words, destroy Qualcomm. And big embarrassment. And then Qualcomm settles the next day. Sorry, Apple settles the next day with Apple. And that to me is an indication, and I think we understand this, that it's the Apple brand that is the true driver of the value of Apple. They're not innovating nearly as much as they used to. Their products are very high quality. Apple is milking its installed base right now. They're the most valuable company at $2 trillion. And to argue over something like this, I think, is going to be incredibly foolish and makes them look like a bully.
Yeah, it's a solid analysis, Pat. And by the way, a good run through history there. I have 2 words: imagine technologies, and what they did to that company. If you look back in history, Apple has done things like that, where they've basically decided on a whim to create more margin. They could essentially take big supplier relationships and basically take a stock to zero and then pick up the scraps for parts. And that's not an atypical big game. We've all seen, the Michael Douglas movies. The point, though, of all this is that Apple sort of has 2 personalities. It has the personality of this warm, loving, caring company that wants to put technology in the hands of the people, democratize communications, connectivity, keep your data private, and cares warmly about everybody in the world being safely connected. And then there's the other side of Apple that appears to be what happens behind closed door. That's maniacal. It's crazy. And you don't get to a $2 trillion valuation without being slightly maniacal. All these companies that are reaching and fighting and going from 1 to 2 trillion, they're aggressive. They're asserting their success and their power. They're capitalism at their best. So you weigh those 2 things in against each other. But no question, Pat, I feel like right now Apple is the remember the Karate Kid, the skeletons, and then the shower.
Right.
Going back, they're just chasing the Karate Kid through the park, through the fields, and they're just, at some point, you have to be able to say, look, we built this together. whether it's Epic, whether it's Qualcomm, whether it's Imagine Technologies, all these different companies, we built this together. We've had a lot of success. I think it's okay to share a little bit of success. And I don't think any of these, the extra 5 cents a phone that Apple wanted to sue Qualcomm over was worth creating all the drama. But that, again, we're not Tim Apple, as President Trump likes to say.
God, I love your two sides. That is freaking brilliant. I might copy that and give you absolutely zero credit when I do.
I love that. So thank you for that. So listen, great show. We were long again. So thanks everybody for holding in there with us. Pat and I have realized that we have way more than 5 minutes on every topic, but we do our best. And we blame the extra 8 minutes on long introductions and closures, not on extended analysis. But listen, seriously, we appreciate everybody that tunes in. We love our community. Hit that subscribe button. If you're not a subscriber, share it with your friends. Hit us on the Twitters. We love to engage there in reasonable debates. If anybody thinks that we're wrong about anything we're saying, and also you can tell us that we're right. That definitely feeds our egos as well. For this episode of the 6-5, Patrick and I have to say goodbye. We'll see you very soon. Have a great day.